The Galactic Combat Academy was the crown jewel of interstellar military training, a prestigious institution where the most advanced species from across the cosmos honed their skills for battle. For centuries, it had been the proving ground for warriors of legendary strength, intelligence, and strategy. To be accepted as a cadet was to carry the pride of one's entire species. Graduates were revered as heroes, their names etched into the annals of galactic history. It was a place of honor, tradition, and, as humanity was about to discover, ruthless competition. The academy grounds spanned an entire moon, with vast training fields, high-tech facilities, and artificial environments simulating every conceivable battlefield. Upon their arrival, the human cadets were awestruck by the grandeur of it all. For many, it was their first time stepping onto another world, let alone mingling with dozens of alien species. The academy was a melting pot of cultures, each species towering over the humans both figuratively and literally. Humanity had been a late addition to the galactic community, having only recently developed faster-than-light travel. Their presence at the academy was as much a political statement as it was a military experiment and opportunity to prove they belonged on the interstellar stage. But from the moment the human cadets arrived, it was clear they were unwelcome. The other species regarded them with a mixture of amusement and disdain. The towering Zircons, with their reptilian scales and fearsome physical strength, smirked as the humans struggled to carry their equipment under the Academy's enhanced gravity. The Khazorians, a species of pale, slender beings capable of telepathic communication, found the humans' reliance on spoken words quaint, even pathetic. Other species, such as the feline-like Brenthari and the multi-limbed Vorsk, barely concealed their laughter as the humans stumbled through the introductory drills. "They're from a death world," one Zircon cadet sneered, his voice a guttural rumble. "But they're so small. Do they even know how to fight?" "They don't need to fight," another chimed in, his claws clicking against the metallic floor. "They probably just run away from their predators." The term Deathworlders was technically accurate but far from complimentary. It referred to species that had evolved on planets with harsh environments, worlds filled with deadly predators, unpredictable weather, and limited resources. For the Zircons, whose homeworld boasted gravity 3 times that of Earth, their strength and endurance were points of pride. For the Khazorians, their evolved psychic abilities marked them as superior beings. The humans, in comparison, seemed woefully ordinary. Their fragile, fleshy bodies and lack of natural defenses only emphasized their perceived inferiority. The first day of training was a disaster for the humans. The Academy's gravity was slightly higher than Earth's, and while the Zircons jogged effortlessly, the human cadets struggled to keep up, their muscles burning with each step. In the hand-to-hand combat drills, the humans were thrown around like ragdolls by the larger, more experienced aliens. The Branthari's razor-sharp reflexes made them untouchable, while the Vorsk's additional arms gave them a significant advantage in grappling exercises. Every failure was met with jeers and mocking laughter. Even the instructors, many of whom belonged to these superior species, seemed skeptical of humanity's presence at the academy. Deathworlders? One Zircon instructor growled during a sparring session, more like softworlders. Despite the ridicule, the human cadets persevered. They knew the odds were stacked against them, but they also knew this was their chance to prove themselves not just as individuals, but as representatives of their entire species. Among them was Lieutenant Sarah Hall, the unofficial leader of the human contingent. A seasoned soldier with a background in reconnaissance, she had been handpicked for the program due to her adaptability and strategic mind. Watching her fellow cadets struggle, she felt a mix of frustration and determination. "Let them laugh," she told her team during a quiet moment in the barracks. "They have no idea what we're capable of." The alien cadets, however, were not content with mere mockery. They actively sought to humiliate the humans at every turn. During a survival exercise in the Academy's simulated jungle, a group of Brenthari cadets sabotaged the humans' equipment, leaving them stranded without food or water. In the zero-gravity training chamber, the Vorsk intentionally targeted the humans with mock battles, exploiting their unfamiliarity with the environment. Each setback was a reminder of how outmatched the humans were. But while the humans struggled with the physical and technical aspects of the training, they began to notice something: the aliens overlooked their own adaptability. The Zircons relied on brute strength, smashing through obstacles without finesse. The Khazorians depended on their telepathic links, which faltered under stress. The Branthari, while agile, were overconfident, often underestimating their opponents. The humans, on the other hand, had spent millennia surviving against impossible odds. They didn't have the luxury of natural advantages, so they had learned to think critically, to innovate, to adapt. By the end of the first week, small victories began to emerge. During a tactical exercise, Lieutenant Hall devised a strategy that outmaneuvered a Zircon squad, using the terrain to their advantage. In a simulated spacewalk, a human cadet repaired a critical system faster than any of the alien teams, thanks to their experience with improvisation. These moments were fleeting, overshadowed by the aliens' dominance, but they hinted at a deeper potential within the humans, a potential the aliens were too blind to see. In the mess hall, the atmosphere remained tense. The humans sat together, their conversations subdued as they endured the alien cadets' taunts. One day, a Khazorian cadet approached their table, his expression smug. "I hear the final simulation is next week," he said telepathically, projecting his voice into their minds. "Don't worry, you'll be eliminated quickly. We wouldn't want you to embarrass yourselves further." Lieutenant Hall met his gaze, her jaw tightening. "We'll see." Behind her defiance, however, was the weight of expectation. The final simulation would be the ultimate test, a live combat scenario that would determine the rankings of each squad. For the humans, it was a chance to silence their detractors or to confirm every insult hurled at them. The stakes had never been higher. As the human cadets returned to their quarters that evening, their determination solidified. They didn't need to be the strongest, the fastest, or the smartest. They only needed to be human, resilient, resourceful, and relentless. And if the aliens thought they were weak, so much the better. Let them underestimate humanity. The real battle was just beginning. The final simulation loomed large over the Galactic Combat Academy, a rite of passage that determined not only a cadet's ranking but their potential as a future leader. For weeks, the human cadets had endured humiliation and mockery, surviving on sheer willpower and grit. Now, they faced their greatest challenge, the silent sector, a battlefield shrouded in artificial darkness where all communication devices, sound, and visual enhancements were rendered useless. It was a test of pure survival, strategy, and instinct. The briefing took place in the Academy's central amphitheater, a vast chamber where the walls shimmered with holographic projections of the silent sector. Cadets from every species sat in their respective groups, their expressions a mixture of excitement and confidence. The human cadets, by contrast, were quieter, their faces etched with determination. Lieutenant Sarah Hall stood at the front of her squad, listening intently as the Zircon instructor outlined the simulation's parameters. "The silent sector is an unforgiving environment," the instructor growled, his voice booming. "Sound and sight are your primary senses, and both will be stripped from you. You will rely on your instincts, your training, and your squadmates. Victory is simple: eliminate all other squads or survive until the end." The alien cadets smirked, their confidence unshaken. The Khazorians, with their telepathic abilities, whispered amongst themselves, certain their mental communication would give them an advantage. The Branthari exchanged knowing glances, their feline eyes glinting with predatory excitement. The Vorsk stretched their multiple limbs, their chittering language sounding like laughter. For them, this was just another opportunity to assert their superiority over the primitive humans. As the briefing ended, the cadets were transported to the staging area, a series of sleek, black dropships waiting to ferry them to the simulation site. The humans huddled together, going over their strategy one last time. Lieutenant Hall's voice was calm but firm as she addressed her squad. "We've been underestimated since day one," she began. "They think we're weak, unfit for combat. But they don't understand what it means to be human. We adapt, we improvise. And today we show them what we're made of." Her words resonated with the squad. For weeks they had been pushed to their limits, but in those moments of struggle, they had learned to rely on each other. They had no psychic abilities, no extra limbs, no natural armor. What they had was ingenuity, teamwork, and the ability to think on their feet. The dropships descended into the silent sector, a sprawling maze of jagged terrain, dense foliage, and artificial craters. As the humans disembarked, they were enveloped in an oppressive silence. The simulation had already begun. Around them, the terrain seemed alive, shifting with subtle vibrations that hinted at hidden dangers. The air was heavy with tension, every step a potential misstep. Lieutenant Hall quickly signaled for her squad to spread out, using hand gestures they had practiced relentlessly during their downtime. In the absence of sound, non-verbal communication became their lifeline. The squad moved like shadows, their boots making almost no noise on the uneven ground. They had spent hours studying the silent sector's layout, memorizing every potential choke point, ambush site, and defensible position. Hall had emphasized the importance of staying low and avoiding open spaces, a lesson learned from observing the Zircons, who relied heavily on their brute strength and towering size. It didn't take long for the first skirmish to erupt. In the distance, a Zircon squad clashed with a group of Branthari. The sound-dampening technology made the battle eerie, with flashes of light and movement, but no noise to accompany the chaos. The humans watched from the shadows, taking note of weaknesses in both squads. The Zircons, while powerful, were slow to react to surprise attacks. The Branthari, though agile, lacked the stamina to sustain prolonged engagements. Hall motioned for her squad to move, leading them deeper into the sector. Their goal was not to engage but to outlast. They laid traps as they went, using the environment to their advantage. A shallow pit was disguised with foliage, its edges lined with jagged rocks. A thin wire, fashioned from fibers pulled from their survival kits, was stretched across a narrow path, designed to trip the unwary. Each trap was simple yet effective, a testament to human resourcefulness. Hours passed, and the human squad remained undetected. They moved like ghosts, avoiding confrontation and conserving their energy. Meanwhile, the other squads were falling victim to their own overconfidence. A group of Vorsk, confident in their multi-limbed agility, charged into a dense thicket only to trigger a hidden trap. The Branthari, relying on their superior night vision, became disoriented in the simulated darkness, their movements erratic and panicked. The Khazorians, who had entered the simulation with the greatest confidence, found themselves at a disadvantage. Their telepathic links, usually a source of unparalleled coordination, were disrupted by the silent sector's unique electromagnetic interference. Unable to communicate, they devolved into chaos, their once perfect formations breaking apart. As the hours stretched into what felt like an eternity, the human squad began to shift the balance of the simulation. One by one, the alien squads fell, either to each other or to the humans' traps. The battlefield, once filled with movement and light, grew eerily still. The human cadets could feel the weight of the silence pressing down on them, but they stayed focused, their training guiding them through the darkness. At one point, they encountered a wounded Zircon cadet, his massive frame slumped against a boulder. He had been left behind by his squad, a testament to their rigid, survival of the fittest mentality. The humans hesitated. They could have finished him off, but Hall motioned for them to move on. Their goal was not to engage unnecessarily but to survive. Compassion, she reminded them silently, was not a weakness. As the simulation neared its conclusion, the humans found themselves in a defensible position, a narrow ravine with high walls that offered cover and a clear line of sight. They prepared for the final push, knowing that the remaining alien squads would converge on their location. Their traps were set, their positions chosen. All they needed to do was hold their ground. The final moments of the simulation were a blur of motion and silent chaos. The last Zircon and Branthari squads, desperate for victory, launched a coordinated assault. But the humans were ready. They used hit-and-run tactics, drawing their enemies into the traps they had painstakingly laid. Smoke grenades, scavenged from fallen squads, created further confusion, masking their movements and disorienting the attackers. When the dust settled, the battlefield was silent once more. The humans, battered but alive, stood victorious. The once mocking alien cadets were nowhere to be seen, their overconfidence and lack of adaptability their ultimate downfall. The silent sector, designed to test the limits of every cadet, had become a proving ground for humanity's greatest strengths: resilience, ingenuity, and the ability to thrive in the face of overwhelming odds. As the simulation ended and the cadets were extracted from the sector, the human squad exchanged glances. They had done what no one thought possible. They had silenced the laughter, not with words but with action. The simulation's conclusion brought an abrupt return to reality. The human cadets, exhausted and covered in the grime of the silent sector, were escorted back to the debriefing chambers aboard the Academy's orbiting station. Their faces were solemn, a mixture of fatigue and disbelief. The silence of the battlefield still hung heavy in their minds, an oppressive reminder of the stakes they had overcome. Yet behind their weariness was a flicker of pride. They had survived. No more than that. They had won. The debriefing chamber was a stark contrast to the chaos they had just left. Bright lights reflected off the polished metal walls, and the seats were arranged in a circular pattern, placing the cadets of all species face to face. The instructors, a mix of Zircon, Khazorian, and Vorsk officers, stood at the center, their expressions unreadable. As the cadets filed in, murmurs rippled through the room. The Zircon squad glared at the humans with barely concealed disdain. The Branthari avoided eye contact, their feline tails flicking in agitation. The Khazorians sat stiffly, their telepathic silence betraying their frustration. The humans remained quiet, unsure of what to expect. Lieutenant Sarah Hall sat at the head of her squad, her gaze steady but cautious. She could feel the weight of every alien's eyes on them, a burning curiosity mixed with resentment. They all wanted to know the same thing. How had the weakest species in the Academy outlasted them? The Zircon instructor, Commander Tharok, began the debriefing with his usual growling authority. The silent sector simulation was designed to test your adaptability, resourcefulness, and capacity for survival under extreme conditions. As always, there were those who excelled and those who failed. He paused, his piercing yellow eyes sweeping across the room before landing on the humans. But this year something unprecedented had occurred. The tension in the room was palpable. Every alien cadet leaned forward, their disbelief evident. Commander Tharok gestured, and a holographic projection appeared in the center of the chamber, replaying key moments from the simulation. The first images showed the Zircon squad barreling through the terrain, crushing obstacles with brute force. Their aggression was impressive, but it quickly became evident that their lack of subtlety made them easy targets. The projection shifted to the Branthari, whose speed and agility allowed them to dominate early engagements until their overconfidence led them into ambushes. And then came the humans. The projection showed them moving silently, their strategies unfolding like a carefully choreographed dance. They laid traps, used the environment to their advantage, and avoided unnecessary confrontations. One particularly striking moment captured a human cadet using nothing but a reflective shard of metal to signal their squadmate across a ravine, coordinating a flanking maneuver that neutralized an entire Vorsk squad. Another clip showed a Branthari cadet falling into a pit trap, his furious struggle silenced by the dampening field. The room was silent as the footage played. For the first time, the alien cadets were forced to confront the reality of what had happened. The humans had not only survived, they had outthought, outmaneuvered, and outlasted every other squad. Their victories were not born of brute strength or advanced technology, but of ingenuity and adaptability. It was a stark contrast to the alien cadets' reliance on their innate abilities, which had failed them when the conditions turned against them. Commander Tharok's voice broke the silence. The human squad demonstrated a level of resourcefulness that we have rarely seen at this academy. They used their limitations as strengths. They adapted to the environment faster than any other squad. And most importantly, they survived where others did not. A murmur spread through the room. The Zircon cadets exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence shaken. The Khazorians' telepathic silence grew heavier, an unspoken acknowledgement of their failure. Even the Branthari, who had mocked the humans relentlessly, seemed subdued. The holographic replay ended, leaving the room in silence once more. Lieutenant Hall met Commander Tharok's gaze. She could see the begrudging respect in his eyes, though his tone remained gruff. "Lieutenant Hall," he said, "would you care to explain your squad's approach?" Hall stood, her posture straight despite the exhaustion weighing on her. "We knew we couldn't compete with the other squads in terms of raw strength or natural abilities," she began, her voice steady. "So we focused on what we could control: strategy and teamwork. We studied the terrain, anticipated the other squad's movements, and avoided unnecessary risks. Our goal was not to dominate but to endure." Her words hung in the air, simple yet profound. The alien cadets listened, some with grudging respect, others with quiet resentment. For weeks they had mocked the humans for their perceived weaknesses, never realizing that those very weaknesses had become their greatest strengths. Commander Thorak nodded slowly. A sound strategy, he admitted, and one that succeeded. Another instructor, a Khazorian with translucent skin and piercing silver eyes, stepped forward. This simulation was not just a test of individual ability, she said, her telepathic voice resonating in their minds. It was a test of unity. The humans have shown us that strength lies not in individual superiority but in collective resilience. Perhaps we all have something to learn from them. The words were unexpected, coming from a species that prided itself on intellectual and psychic dominance. The human cadets exchanged glances, their pride tempered by the enormity of what had just been said. For the first time they were being acknowledged not as inferiors but as equals. The debriefing ended with the announcement of the simulation's final rankings. The humans, against all odds, had claimed the top spot. As they left the chamber, the alien cadets regarded them with a mixture of emotions. Some, like the Zirkons, struggled to mask their resentment. Others, like the Khazorians and Branthari, seemed contemplative, their perspectives shifting. Back in the barracks, the human cadets finally allowed themselves to celebrate. Laughter and relief filled the air as they recounted their experiences, their camaraderie stronger than ever. Lieutenant Hall watched her squad with quiet pride, knowing that their victory was more than just a personal achievement, it was a statement to the entire galaxy. Word of the simulation's outcome spread quickly through the Academy and beyond. The once mocking whispers about the Deathworlders were replaced with conversations tinged with respect and curiosity. The humans had proven themselves not through power or technology, but through the sheer force of their will and ingenuity. In the weeks that followed, the humans continued their training, their newfound reputation earning them both allies and enemies. They knew their journey was far from over, but they also knew that they had taken the first step toward changing the galaxy's perception of humanity. The battlefield might have gone silent, but the echoes of their triumph would resonate for generations.